Okay, so I'm just going to do a little review for those of you that weren't here last time and just to kind of bring us back together. Last time, Madison talked about defining some terms about working with diverse groups, and the first definition is prejudice, non-discriminator, and these they feel hostile to others but recognize that their law and social pressure are opposed to over-discrimination. This person does not translate prejudice into action. And then the prejudice discriminator does not feel and believe the values of freedom and equality and constantly discriminates against the other groups in both word and deed. And then the oppression is the unjust or cruel exercise of authority or power. And then a minority group is a group that has or a subordinate status and objected to discrimination. And then we talked about like stereotypes, and some of like factors are age, class, color, culture, disability, ethnicity, gender, identity, and oppression. And then we talked about like some of the myths and stereotypes of gays, and then just the importance of having knowledge about the people that you are counseling and working with. And now Mariah is going to go over section 3 and 4.
Okay, first off, I'd just like to recommend to everyone, we made the outline so it doesn't give you a ton of information, so I recommend to take notes on things that you think are important. So I'm going over section 7.3 and 7.4. First of all, I'd like to start off with a little exercise, so I need everyone to close their eyes. I'm going to read a scenario to you and so try and imagine it the best that you can. Imagine you and a friend are traveling in Iran. Your bags are stolen and they contain your passports, other forms of identification, and all of your money. What are your fears? If you decide to go to a social service agency for help, would you be scared of how you'll be treated? Would you be worried the agency wouldn't believe you or might even turn you over to the police, who might throw you in jail? You don't speak the language, so how are you going to communicate the situation that you're in? Okay, so everyone open their eyes. So what would you guys do in that situation? Like, how would you feel?
I feel scared that, my identity could be stolen, and they could sell my passport, and I'd actually, being someone that's traveled, I'd actually just call the American Embassy.
You would?
But, yeah.
But it'd be scary, right? Everyone can agree on that. It'd be really scary. So we have to, as social workers, we need to know that the feelings that we would have in a situation like that are like feelings that many members of racial or ethnic groups feel when they try to get help here. So we need to, if we're going into the social work field, we need to convey warmth, competence, calmness, and interest in problems that people are having that are of different race. So first, I'm going to talk about anger management and just things that we need to remember to do when we're dealing with someone that's angry. We need to remember not to personalize outbursts. We need to understand that clients may often display anger that we have little to no control over. We need to understand that ventilation can sometimes help the client. And we need to know that sometimes just being warm and being nice to the client is very helpful. If we ever fear that a client may become violent, we should invite another coworker to participate in the sessions. If we're making a home visit and we sense that there might be some kind of danger, we also need to maybe invite someone else or even get a police escort. Next thing I'll talk about is cultural communication. which are all just some more guidelines that we need to follow when we're doing that. Avoid using clients' children as interpreters because it embarrasses the parents and makes them feel stupid. When the interpreter is used, workers should talk straight to the client and not to the interpreter. And always use your own patterns of communication and don't try to talk in their accent or use certain words that they use because it could result in being very offensive. The book says that a worker with an urban background employed in a small rural community needs to live a life consistent with community values and standards. Someone who violates community norms will not be effective in a small community because he or she will not have the necessary credibility. It is also recommended that workers in initial meetings with adult clients of diverse and racial ethnic groups should observe all formalities. And then in groups, we need to make sure that when we're dealing with diversity, that no race should outnumber another. It should always be equal. And we need to make sure to become very familiar with different cultures and types of life. When it comes to ethnic sensitive practice, traditionally the social work field has used the medical model, which we talked about in the earlier chapters. The problem with the medical model is that it focuses on just identifying the problems, which could make people feel really self-conscious. So we must always be thinking that each ethnic group has a history that is bearing on the current problems that they are bringing to the group. The book also talks about the dual perspective. This concept derived from the view that all people are a part of two systems. The first system is that it's called the dominant or sustaining system, which is basically the society that someone lives in, which is where their source of power and economic resources come from. The second is the nurturing system, which is composed of the physical and social environment of someone, like their family and the community. So the dual perspective asserts that the adverse consequences of an oppressed society on the self-concept of a person of color or of any minority group can be partially offset by the nurturing system. So those two systems kind of balance each other out. Next, I'll talk about empowerment. The book defines empowerment as the process of helping individuals, families, groups, and communities increase their personal, interpersonal, socioeconomic, and political strength and influence toward improving their circumstances. Empowerment encounters hopelessness and powerlessness with an emphasis on the ability of each person to address the problem. Next is the strength perspective, which is kind of like empowerment. It seeks to identify, use, build, and reinforce the abilities and strengths that people have. So it has a big emphasis on people's abilities, interests, aspirations, resources, beliefs, and accomplishments. In the book, it talks about Salvy's 5 principles that underlie the guiding assumptions of strength perspective. And that's on page 239. If anyone has the books, could you turn to page 239, please? Do you have the books? Okay, I'll just read them. Every individual, group, family, and community has strengths. 2, trauma, abuse, illness, and struggle may be injurious, but may also be sources of challenge and opportunity. 3, assume that you do not know the upper limits of the capacity to grow and change and take individual, group, and community aspirations seriously. 4, we best serve our clients by collaborating with them. 5, every environment is full of resources. Next is section 7.4. This section is kind of short, and so it's quick. But first, it talks about culturally competent practice. And in order for us to become culturally competent social workers, we need to become aware of the culture and its pervasive influence. We need to learn about our own cultures. We need to recognize our own ethnocentricity. We need to learn about other cultures, and We need to acquire knowledge, cultural knowledge about clients, and we need to adapt social work skills and intervention approaches accordingly. And then the book also states 10 standards for cultural competence from the National Associations of Social Workers. Number 1 is ethics and values. 2, self-awareness. 3, cross-cultural knowledge. 4, cross-cultural skills. 5, service delivery. 6, empowerment and advocacy. 7, diverse workforce. And 8, professional education. 9, language diversity. And 10, cross-cultural leadership. And so, since nobody brought the book, I'll just pass this one out because I wanted everyone to read it aloud to help you maybe understand it. So could you read number 1 for me?
Ethics and values. Social workers shall function in accordance with the values, ethics, and standards of the profession, recognizing how personal and professional values may conflict with or accommodate the needs of diverse clients.
Self-awareness. Social workers shall seek to develop an understanding of their own personal cultural values and beliefs as one way of appreciating the importance of multicultural identities in the life of people.
Cross-cultural knowledge. Social workers shall have and continue to develop a specialized knowledge and understanding about histories, traditions, values, family systems, and artistic expressions of major client groups that they serve.
Cross-cultural skills. Social workers shall use appropriate methodological approaches, skills, and techniques that reflect the workers' understanding of the role of culture in the helping process.
Service delivery. Social workers shall be knowledgeable about the scope and the use of services available in the community and broader society, and be able to make appropriate referrals for the diverse clients.
Empowerment and advocacy. Social workers shall be aware of the effect of social policies and programs on diverse client populations, advocating for and with clients whenever appropriate.
Diverse workforce. Social workers shall support and advocate for recruitment, admissions, and hiring and retention efforts, social work programs and agencies that ensure diversity within their profession.
Professional education. Social workers shall advocate for and participate in educational and training programs that help advance cultural competence within the profession.
9, language diversity. Social workers shall seek to provide or advocate for the provision of information, referrals, and services in language appropriate to the client, which may include use of interpreters. 9.
Okay. Cross-cultural leadership. Social workers shall be able to communicate information about diverse client groups to other professionals.
Thank you, everyone. So, like I said again, that's just from the National Association of Social Workers, and that's the 10 standards of cultural competence. So, just in the closing to wrap it all up, we just need, the book talks about like a lot of certain things that we should do to make us better when dealing with groups and stuff, but we just need to remember overall to be understanding of people's backgrounds. And we can't just jump to conclusions just because they have certain problems. We need to try and think about where they come from and their environments that they've been in and stuff like that, and it'll help us all better help people that we try to help. And now I'll turn it over to Kelsey for section 7.5.
I want to sit in a chair. I feel like I'm talking, like having a discussion instead of I'm just stopping normally.
and you're forced to listen to me. So, okay, and 7.5 starts off the indicators for the achievement of the standards for cultural competence. And the book asks, being culturally competent, like what does it really mean? How can you measure it? How do you know if you're striving to be culturally competent as a social worker? How can you assess if an agency or an organization is striving for that goal? And how can you evaluate your practice related to this standard? And the book further goes on to talk about the NSAW, as what she was previously talking about. Like it gives indicators of what a culturally competent social worker should attain, and that's basically they should be able to, they should have the ability to describe areas of conflict and accommodate between personal values, professional values, their own cultural values, be able to distinguish like how you can, like how they're the same and recognize how they're different. And they should also have the ability to recognize where they come in, where they're the same, like where they meet, and how they're different. The values of a dominant group in society, and how it's like a historically oppressed or unrepresented population. So I guess you could use an example of, I don't know, a rich, I guess, I don't know, rich white person, or, you know, or like, I'm like a poor, I'll choose myself like a poor Native American, you know, just how they have similarities, but yet they have complete differences too. Like a competent social worker should be able to bring them together and make sure they recognize the differences and their similarities at the same time. And they should also show appreciation and respect for the differences and the struggles and the differences and strengths that they both obtain. Now, the next topic is safeguarding human rights, and the book talks about the EPAS, which stands for Educational Policy and Accreditation Standards, and it says that in 2008, their educational policy, it stated that service, social justice, and dignity and worth of the person, human rights, importance of human relationships, integrity, competence, and scientific inquiry are the core values of social work. And then it later states that it says each person, regardless of position in society, has basic human rights such as freedom, safety, privacy, an adequate standard of living, health care, and education. And like I said, then they also, it just goes on to say they can just recognize the interconnection between the two different cultures. Then it goes on to talk about social justice, and it says Barker defines it as an ideal condition in which all members of society have the same basic rights, protections, opportunities, obligations. I mean, that's not anything new to anybody else. And then it defines human rights as everybody gets the same opportunity as everybody else, like regardless of where you come from, who your name or who your last name is, how much money you have, what gender you are, your religion, sex, anything. And then it says it also includes the basic civil rights recognized in our Constitution. And I have a video to show. It talks about the United Nations. They have a Universal Declaration of Human Rights that they follow along in their, I don't know what you want to call it, country, nation, something that they're going on with. that's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and so I wouldn't have to read it off to you. But what I want to turn it more into a discussion rather than me just like I'm just talking is one of them is the right to marry and marriage to be consented by both parties. The family is entitled to protection from the state. And so my thing is like being a social worker and being a Christian, you have a strong stance in both. Like you want to make a change. You want to make sure people have like human rights practice and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean you're really strong in your faith as a Christian. So when being presented with that specific topic, I mean, how do you decide about the whole gay marriage thing? Like you're a social worker, so therefore you try to practice human rights, make sure that everybody gets a fair and equal opportunity that anything that life has to offer. But seeing that you're a Christian, I mean, obviously everybody knows like where Christians stand on that whole topic. So I mean, if anybody has like, does anybody like to discuss like how do you balance that out? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, I'm asking because I would like to honestly know your opinion.
I don't know, but I like as a social worker that like, I'm always taught like go into a situation knowing how you feel about it, and instead like kind of like I said how you feel, what your personal beliefs are, and just because like if there's a situation that you don't agree with, that you don't always personally have to be part of that. You can choose what you're a part of and what you're not a part of, even in your profession.
So like if you just like you pick and choose whether or not you want to.
Well, like okay, like see, I don't know with the social work thing. I don't, but like as a nurse, like I can choose. Like if I don't want to be part of it, like an abortion, I can choose not to be in the room, not to have anything to do with that, but I'll still do everything to care for the person, and I'll still, I may not agree with their action, but I'll still treat them with dignity and respect.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's another one, rights of freedom of thought. Conscience and religion. Obviously, it's a big problem or it becomes a problem whenever people try to freely express their religions and thoughts and beliefs of what they think. And going into that, the book it describes that. Like it's common for a government to accuse other governments of violating human rights while at the same time overlooking their own violations. And then it also says that I've not figured out how to pronounce the name. Is it Richard, supposed to be Reichart, R-E-I-C-H-E-R-T?
I don't know.
The R dude. It says that he gives a statement and says like the United States compared to many other countries fails to fulfill its obligation to promote human rights for all. And I feel like that is completely true, very true in so many ways. And I feel like a prime example of that is everybody knows Duck Dynasty, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the whole spiel of
happy.
Yeah, Phil giving his opinion about his religion and all that stuff, and obviously the whatever TV channel that is. I didn't like it that he says I don't support gay and lesbian and all that stuff. And then he's a Christian man. Obviously, that's not anything new if you watch the show. And he got suspended from his own show, like from a show that originated from him. And then me, obviously, that didn't make any sense. I'm like, I started this, so how you gonna kick me off of my stuff? Like, you know, I'm like, that's just me. But, so yeah, like that's not a freedom of expression and freedom of religion. So that's why the book is saying, like, a country is so so quick to point a finger at somebody else and tell them, well, you're doing wrong and you do this and this and that. But I mean, even though I have my own wrongdoings or whatever, but we're not focusing on that because you're doing this over here. So they're just overlooking their own problems. And then the next topic is the RAP framework for leading, and the RAP stands for Recognize, Anticipate, and Problem Solve. And the recognize part of this is that like when leading a multiracial group, like you have to take into consideration that there's going to be ethical, cultural, religion, like class and society. There's going to be differences in any group that you have that you're trying to lead. And so that's just a main key and factor is recognizing that there's going to be difference, because you don't want to step on anybody's toes or anything. You don't want to be offensive, or because you wouldn't want anybody to come off offensive towards you or anything. So you got to be aware of personal values and stereotypes. Let's see, you have to have some type of respect for like their culture's norms and their values, and then be familiar with resources in the community that are responsive to the needs of those components of that group. Be aware of various forms of institutional discrimination in the community, and you also need to be aware of racial tensions in the community that may concern anybody within the group, because that's obviously not something that you want to just let go away, just to let ride out. And the next one is anticipate. And so if I felt like, or just with that, with me asking you guys, what's your insight about being a social worker and being a strong Christian? For instance, I had to anticipate like somebody just would have like lashed out on me. Well, I feel this and this and that. Like I'm anticipating maybe something going wrong, or some tension, some conflict somewhere. And then problem solve. If there's a problem, learn come up with ways how to solve it. You obviously just don't want to leave things out in the open air without anything being solved, because or else people will not be happy and feel like I guess you don't care. And then the next topic is a feminist intervention. I found this very interesting because I didn't realize exactly how negatively people thought of the whole feminist movement. People called it stupid and said it was bad for many different reasons. Talking about how it makes men look like they just hate women, and basically was like degrading men. And but at the same time, I feel like it's very important for males and females to have some sense of awareness of the whole feminism. And Barker, in the book, he gives like a brief definition of feminist therapy, which is basically like somebody, in the most naturally, in the book it says most naturally it's gonna, usually a woman is helping somebody else, most likely to be a woman too, like help overcome if she was like being discriminated because she's a woman, or who's like been stereotyped all throughout her life because she's a woman, and basically just has like the whole women is the, what's it called, the dawn in distress, or what is it called? Something that
The damsel in distress.
Damsel in distress, yeah. That's basically how she looks at life and how she looks at her own life, and that's basically what feminist therapy does, is help bring that particular woman out of that particular situation and that mindset, And then in the book, it says that Kirsten Ashman and Hull define feminism as the philosophy of equality between women and men that involves both attitudes and actions, and aspects of life, education, advocacy, individual differences, and accomplishments regardless of gender. And then to go on about, I think I have it on that outline. And then it says like it has five key components of their definition, and it talks about the philosophy of equality, which doesn't necessarily mean that women need to take on a masculine role in life. It just means that women and men should have equal or identical rights to opportunities and choices, regardless of the situation, and that men nor women should be discriminated against just because of their gender. And then the body, both attitudes and actions. The attitude is meaning more of the feminism emphasizes the importance of viewing other people in a fair, objective perspective and avoiding the stereotyping. And actions is make sure that you're taking those actions to practice what your attitude is, put them into actions. And all aspects of life, that the equality just doesn't apply to equal opportunity to like a job or promotion. Like it applies to anything in life. Like the whole men should ask women out on a date. Well, if a girl really likes a boy, then ask him out on a date. It shouldn't make you feel indifferent. I guess like the whole women taking on a man's last name when they're married. Well, I mean, I've heard a man is taking on the woman's last name. I personally love my last name, and so if I get married, that might be a problem because I love my last name. And providing education and advocacy, basically just educating them on the whole like feminist thing, like or if a woman is being she's being discriminated or stereotyped, basically like I'll just let them know, like if Roberto was, if he was I feel like he was, well, I'm not gonna say like sexually harassing me, but well,
He just did.
I'm trying to
It's okay.
Well, like, yeah, if Roberto was, he was discriminating against me because he felt like I can't help him go move the 50-pound rock outside. Like, oh, I need you to go find me a man who can do it. Well, I'd be like, well, okay, you're stereotyping because I'm a woman, and I could probably beat you on the plane. But I mean, I would just educate. I mean, not just give him like a brief like. Discussion about it. Well, I mean, like, you're wrong for doing, like, don't stereotype me just because I'm a woman. Don't automatically assume that I can't help you move a big rock. So, and then the last one is the appreciation of individual differences. You just gotta, but the feminist perspective places a high value on empowering women by emphasizing our qualities and strengths. And then the book lists 9 principles of feminist therapy. And I don't know about you guys, but if you all like really take the time to read this stuff, like it's quite empowering. Like I feel like I could take like this whole group of women and we could all just go conquer the world, like for real. Like, this is really good stuff. The first one is a client's problem should be viewed within a socio-political framework. So basically, so basically, a primary distinguishing characteristic of feminist treatment is to help the client analyze how her problems are related to systematic difficulties experienced by women in a sexist classes and racist society. So basically, just recognizing that there's a problem and learning how to overcome it. And the second one is traditional sex roles are pathological